Rejected and humiliated by the ruthless Alpha King, she laughs, glad to be free of a fate she never wanted. But when ancient powers awaken and war threatens the realm, he discovers the brutal truth. The woman he cast aside is the last of a vanished bloodline, and the only one who can save or destroy his kingdom. The night of choosing. People still tell this story in hushed voices, as if the mountains themselves might lean in to listen. They say it began on the coldest night of winter, when the Alpha King rejected the girl who laughed instead of cried. Snow whispered across the stone courtyards of Frostbane Keep, soft as secrets, sharp as broken glass beneath armored boots. Inside the great hall, fire roared in the twin hearths, painting gold light over fur cloaks, polished steel, and restless eyes. Warriors stood shoulder to shoulder, a wall of muscle and scars, while elders watched from carved chairs like wary, aging wolves guarding the last of their strength. At the center of it all stood King Kael Thorne, Alpha of the North, the man the world called the Wolf King. To the warriors, he was a legend dragged from old songs. Broad-shouldered, dark-haired, eyes the color of storm clouds before lightning struck. His armor bore a silver wolf's head, not as a boast, but as a warning. To his enemies, he was a shadow in the snow, the howl that came before defeat. To his own people, he was the line between them and the cold, hungry things that moved unseen beyond the borders of their land. But tonight, he was just a man who did not want to hurt anyone ever again. "You look like you'd rather face a dragon than this crowd," murmured a low, amused voice at his side. Kael exhaled slowly, breath misting in the cold air that managed to slip even into the blazing hall. His beta, Ryan, leaned on a pillar nearby, arms folded, eyes sweeping the room. "I would," Kael answered quietly. "A dragon, I understand." "Yet here you are," Ryan replied. "Chosen knight, mating ceremony, half the noble daughters of the realm waiting to see if the moon favors them. Your line must continue, my king. The packs are restless. The storms grow worse. You know this." Kael knew. He had heard it from elders, from council, from the frightened whispers of villagers who spoke of strange shadows in the forest and stars that flickered like dying candles. He had seen the way the sky sometimes turned a wrong kind of red at dawn, how the air trembled with a power he could not name. A mate would steady the bond of the packs, strengthen their magic, soothe the beast in his blood. That was exactly what terrified him. He remembered another night, years ago, when the wolf inside him had lost control on the battlefield, when rage and grief had drowned out his human mind, and his claws had torn through everything too close. Enemy, friend, it hadn't mattered. He remembered waking with blood on his hands and no memory of how it got there. His mother's voice still echoed in his mind, worn and tired before the sickness took her. A true alpha's strength is not in his bite, Kael, but in his mercy. But mercy is a blade. It can save or destroy. He had sworn, then, never to let his strength destroy someone he loved. "Ryan," Kael said, his voice softer now, "if the moon gives me a mate tonight, I may have to reject her." Ryan's gaze snapped to him, the easy humor gone. "You would reject a fated bond? Are you serious?" Kael's jaw tightened. He watched the dancing fire, feeling the heat on his scarred knuckles. "If my bond makes her a target for the darkness that hunts us, if my temper, my wolf, ever hurts her, yes." Ryan shook his head. "You're not your father, Kael." "Tell that to the men I couldn't save," Kael said quietly. Before Ryan could answer, the great iron bell above the hall rang once, deep and solemn. Conversation dipped, then hushed. Every gaze turned toward the raised stone platform where the moon window waited, a circular opening in the ceiling, framed in silver, giving a clear view of the winter sky. It was time. Kael stepped forward, every motion controlled, every breath measured. Inside, his wolf shifted restlessly, pacing against the edges of his control. The beast understood what this night meant. Bond, scent, touch, mate. It wanted, it longed, and under that longing, old fears coiled like smoke. He climbed the steps to the platform. Cold moonlight spilled through the opening, soft over his dark hair and fur-lined cloak. Below, in the wide space at the center of the hall, women stood in a rough circle, each from different packs, different lands. Some wore silks, some leather, some simple wool. All of them were tense, hopeful, afraid. The High Seer, a thin woman with white braids and sightless silver eyes, raised her hands. "When the moon's light finds her," she intoned, "the bond will answer, wolf to soul, alpha to heart, so it has always been, so it will be again." Kael wanted to tell her that nothing was as it always had been. The stars themselves were changing, but he said nothing. Kings learned to swallow their doubts. The seer motioned. "Step forward, my king, let the moon decide." As he did, something tugged at him, not from above, but from the crowd itself. A scent, faint yet cutting through smoke and sweat and incense like a blade of cool, clean air. Rain on warm stone. A laugh carried from somewhere near the back, light and unbothered, so out of place amid the tension that several heads snapped around to find the source. Kael's wolf went still, then surged, claws scraping at his ribs. His heartbeat stuttered. There the wolf growled inside him. There. He followed the pull through the crowd, his gaze searching. The moon shifted, a beam of silver sliding like a searching hand over the gathered faces. It brushed past the jeweled princesses, the armored she-wolves, the noble daughters standing tall and terrified. Then it found her. She did not look like someone who belonged inside a royal court. Her dress was simple, silver gray like morning mist, cinched at the waist with a leather belt too practical for ceremony. A travel pack rested near her boots, as if she had only stopped here on her way to somewhere else. Her hair fell in loose waves of pale gold around pointed ears half hidden behind it, catching the moonlight like spun fire. And her eyes. Her eyes were not wolf gold or human brown. They were a strange, bright shade of blue-green, like ocean water in a place he had only ever read about, full of light and secrets. She blinked up at the falling moonbeam, then at him, and Kael felt the ground tilt. The bond snapped into place like a door slamming shut. Heat rushed through his veins, startling and sharp, followed by a sense of rightness so powerful it almost hurt. His wolf roared in triumph, then went silent, sinking down as if in awe. The girl's hand flew to her chest. Her lips parted, and he saw it hit her too, the invisible thread tightening between them, the strange awareness, the thunderlow echo of his heart inside her own. Her gaze locked on his, wide with surprise. Somewhere far away, he heard the gasps from the nobles, the rustle of elders shifting in their seats, the sharp inhale of the seer. "A human," someone whispered. "No, look at her ears. Is she even from a pack?" Kael barely heard them. In that spinning, breathless moment, all he knew was that the moon had chosen. Not a princess groomed for politics. Not a warrior trained to walk at a king's side. A traveler with an ill-fitting dress and laughter still clinging to her lips. She swallowed, steadying herself, then did the strangest thing. She smiled. It wasn't the timid, calculated smile he was used to seeing in court. It was bright, open, and almost amused, like she couldn't believe the universe had played this ridiculous joke on her. Of all the women in the hall, she looked the least afraid. The seer stepped forward, her blind eyes wide. For the first time in Kael's life, he saw genuine fear on the old woman's face. "Your Majesty," she whispered, "this is unexpected." "Clearly," he said, forcing his voice to be calm when his blood was a storm. "Who is she?" The girl straightened a little, as if she didn't like being spoken about instead of to. "My name is Aria," she said, her voice clear and warm, carrying easily over the murmurs. "I came with the mountain traders. I wasn't supposed to be in this hall, but the guard said everyone was allowed to watch, so, well." She gestured up at the moonlight casually. This happened. Her candor was so disarming that a few warriors actually chuckled. Ryan let out a breath that might have been a laugh if he hadn't been so tense. She is no wolf, an elder muttered. No clan mark, no pack brand. This cannot be right, High Seer. The moon does not make mistakes. The moon rarely makes them, the seer answered quietly, her fingers trembling. But when it does, it is because the world itself is shifting. Her words fell like ice. Kael looked at Aria again, taking in the small details he'd missed. The faint silver patterning on her skin at her throat, almost like hidden runes. The way the air around her seemed a little brighter, as if the light liked touching her. The steady way she held his gaze, curious instead of awed. His wolf pressed against him, desperate to move forward, to close the space between them, to claim. He could not. He saw it like a vision, the enemies who already wanted his head now turning their eyes on her. The shadows at the borders sniffing out his weakness, striking at the one thing that made him vulnerable. He saw her laughter silenced by his world's brutality, her brightness swallowed by the darkness that followed him. His mother's warning echoed again. Mercy is a blade. It can save or destroy. If he accepted her, she would be stepping into his war. If he rejected her, he would be cutting both of them free before the bond tangled them too deeply to escape. It felt like being asked to choose which part of himself to kill. Ryan's hand brushed his arm, a silent question. What will you do? The entire hall waited. Kael stepped down from the platform, boots thudding softly on stone. Each pace toward Aria felt both right and wrong, his wolf straining forward, his human heart pulling back. He stopped an arm's length away, close enough to see the faint gold flecks in her strange eyes, the way her chest rose and fell a little too quickly. Up close, she smelled like rain and pine and something older he couldn't name. It wrapped around him, steady and clean, cutting through years of blood and iron. Aria, he said, testing her name in his mouth, feeling the bond tug when he spoke it. Do you know what it means to be chosen by the moon? Her brows lifted slightly. From what I've heard, she answered, it means I'm supposed to stand at your side and not let you scare everyone to death. A ripple of shocked laughter went through the hall. Even Ryan's lips twitched. Kael felt an unwanted, incredulous warmth stir in his chest. She didn't flinch from him, she didn't worship him. She teased him. You find this amusing? He asked, though there was no real anger in his tone. A little, she admitted. I was planning to sell herbs in the market and maybe not freeze to death this winter. Becoming Queen of Wolves was not on my list, but I've handled worse surprises. Her courage, no, her calm, cut deeper than fear would have. She had no idea what she was stepping into. No idea what he was really like when the wolf took over. No idea what hunted his borders. The bond might have chosen her, but she had not chosen this life. He realized, suddenly, that rejecting her might be the kindest thing he could do. The hall quieted again as he drew in a long, slow breath. Around them, the torches seemed to bend closer, shadows leaning in to listen. Even the snow at the high windows paused its restless dance. Aria, he said again, and something in his voice made Ryan's spine straighten. By the law of our people, a fated bond is sacred. It can be accepted or rejected. Her expression flickered, the first real crack in her composure. Rejected, she repeated softly. He saw it then. Beneath her humor, there was steel, but also a deep, quiet loneliness. Someone who had stood alone for a long time, pretending it did not bother her. Someone who had finally felt, for the span of one breath, chosen. His chest ached. He swallowed the knot in his throat, forcing himself to look her in the eye. A king did not turn away from the pain he caused, even when it was his own. I cannot bind you to my life. My enemies are many. My temper is not safe. This kingdom, this throne, it eats the people I care for. I will not feed it another. Her eyes searched his face, as if looking for the punchline to a joke that never came. The hall waited, the silence heavy enough to snap. "You're serious," she said finally. "Yes." For a heartbeat, something fragile passed across her features. Hurt, maybe, or the ghost of an old rejection surfacing once more. But then, to the shock of every soul in the hall, including Kael, she did the most unexpected thing she could have done. She laughed. Not a bitter laugh, not a broken one. A bright, disbelieving sound that rose up and bounced against the stone arches overhead like a challenge to the night itself. "You reject me," she said, shaking her head as she tried to stop smiling and failed. "You don't even know who I am, Your Majesty." Her laughter faded, but the light in her eyes did not. If anything, it sharpened. There was no desperation in her, no pleading, only a quiet sort of dignity, as if his rejection had brushed against wounds that were old, but well kept. In the shadows of the high seats, the High Seer clutched her staff so tightly her knuckles went white. "King Kael," she whispered, her voice barely more than air, yet somehow it carried through the hall. "Before you speak the words that cannot be undone, you must know. The signs, they have been there for years. The vanishings, the storms, the fading of the old magic." Kael did not look away from Aria, but his voice hardened. "What are you saying, Seer?" "I am saying," the Seer replied, "that if the moon has chose this girl, then she is no accident. She is a thread holding back a storm we do not understand. I am saying that whatever she is, she may be the last of it." Aria's brows drew together. The last of what? The Seer's sightless eyes seemed to look straight through her. The last of her kind. The words fell between them like a blade. Kael felt the room spin, the weight of 100 possible futures crashing down on his shoulders. If he bound her to him, she would be a beacon for every enemy. If he let her go, he might be cutting loose the only hope his kingdom had left. The hall held its breath. Duty pulled one way, compassion tugged the other, and in the middle stood Aria, still half smiling, not yet understanding that her life had just become the center of a war she couldn't see. Kael opened his mouth, his heart tearing itself in two as he chose the path he believed would hurt her least. "I, Kael Thorne, Alpha King of the North," he began, feeling the invisible bond tighten like a rope about to snap. "Reject." He couldn't finish. Something inside him roared in protest, so loud it drowned out his own voice. Aria's hand flew to her chest, eyes wide, as if she felt that same invisible scream tearing through her soul. And in that frozen heartbeat, with his next word hanging on the edge of his tongue and the fate of both their lives balanced on a single breath, the moonlight above them flickered, just once, as if the sky itself refused to watch what he was about to do. The bond that refused to break. Years later, people would say the whole kingdom changed in the space of a single swallowed word. They would say that if the Alpha King had finished his sentence that night, the North itself might have cracked open. The moonlight above them flickered again, brighter this time, as if the sky were drawing a sharp breath. A low, trembling hum moved through the stone floor, up through Kael's boots and into his bones. The wolf inside him lunged forward, howling in pure refusal. He tasted iron on his tongue. Aria stumbled, a hand pressed to her chest, eyes wide. What was that? Before anyone could answer, a sudden wind tore through the closed hall. Torches guttered and flared. Banners snapped against the walls. The fire in the great hearths leapt as if someone had thrown oil upon it, then dropped low, burning blue at the edges. The High Seer gasped. "Stop, Kael, do not speak the last word." He froze, the half-formed rejection lodged in his throat like a stone. Around them, warriors reached for weapons they didn't dare draw, not against their own king, not against the sky itself. Elders clutched amulets and whispered old prayers. "What is this?" one of the nobles shouted over the rising wind. "Is this a sign? Is the bond cursed?" Aria swayed again. Kael moved without thinking, catching her elbow before she fell. The moment his hand touched her, the wind dropped as suddenly as it had come. The flames steadied. The humming in the floor faded to a faint echo. The hall shivered into silence. Aria looked up at him, breathless, her face inches from his. Up close, he could see the spray of faint freckles across her nose, the way her pupils were still wide from shock. He also saw something else. She wasn't just scared, she was confused and almost offended. "You were really going to do it," she said softly. "You were really going to reject me." Kael let go of her arm slowly, as if every inch of space between them cost him something. "I still might," he answered honestly. "For your sake, not mine." Her jaw set. "You don't get to decide what's good for me without asking." The honesty in her voice stung more than any insult could have. He turned away, needing space, needing to think. The High Seer stepped between them, her staff ringing once on the stone. "The bond resists," she said, her voice shaking. "King Kael, if you force the rejection tonight, it may not be only your hearts that break. The old powers are restless. I fear the magic that sleeps in this girl is tied to more than just you." "I will not bind her to a life of danger," Kael replied. "I will not claim her only to watch my enemies use her against me." "Then do not claim her," the seer said, "yet do not break her either. Give the bond time, 3 nights, until the next full rising of the moon. Let us learn what she is before you decide her fate." 3 nights. It sounded too long and not long enough. Murmurs rippled through the gathered wolves. This is madness. What if she's a spy? What if she's a blessing? What if she's a curse? Ryan stepped forward, his voice steady. The seer is right. We know nothing. Killing a mystery or casting it out never saved anyone. It only turns your back on a danger you don't understand. One of the older alphas snorted. "Easy for you to say. It is not your mate." Ryan didn't flinch. "No, it is my king's, and I stand with him whichever way he chooses after we have answers." Kael looked at Aria again. She was holding herself straight, but her fingers were curled tightly around the strap of her pack, knuckles pale. She caught him watching and lifted her chin. "I can leave," she said quietly. "I didn't ask for any of this. If my being here puts your people in danger, I will walk away. I've done it before." "You will not walk anywhere tonight," Kael said, harsher than he intended. "The roads are not safe, even for those who belong here. You will stay as a guest, under guard." One of the nobles smirked. "Guest, is that what we call prisoners now?" Kael's gaze snapped to him, cold enough to burn. "No chains," he said, his voice carrying to every corner of the hall. "No cells. She is to be treated with respect. Anyone who forgets that answers to me." Aria's eyes softened for a heartbeat. "Careful, Your Majesty. If you keep being kind, people might stop being afraid of you." A corner of Ryan's mouth twitched. Kael almost smiled, then swallowed it back. "I doubt it," he said. "Ryan, escort Aria to the East Tower. Give her whatever she needs." The beta nodded. "With pleasure." As Ryan led Aria away through the murmuring crowd, the hall slowly broke apart into smaller knots of argument and worry. The High Seer lingered at Kael's side. "You feel it, don't you?" she asked softly. "The way the air bends around her." "I feel a lot of things I do not trust," he answered. "Fear, hope, both are dangerous." "The truly dangerous thing," the seer replied, "is a king who tries to cut out his own heart because he is afraid of what it might cost him." He did not answer that. Later, when the hall had emptied and the moon had climbed higher, Kael climbed the narrow stairs to the East Tower. The guards at Aria's door straightened at once. "She gave you any trouble?" he asked. "No, Your Majesty," one guard said. "She asked for hot water, a blanket, and a window that opens." Kael almost laughed. "Give her the blanket, keep the window locked." Inside, the room was small but warmer than most. Someone had already brought in food and a basin of steaming water. Aria stood by the shuttered window, tracing the frost with one finger, lost in thought. She didn't jump when he entered. I was wondering when the Wolf King would come inspect his dangerous guest. "You think you're dangerous now," he said lightly. "I think someone does," she replied. "I've never seen a room full of warriors look that nervous about a girl with a backpack." He stepped closer, searching her face. "You've never felt anything strange before, no flashes of power, no voices in your head, no sense that you were different." Her laugh was dry. "Of course I felt different. I grew up in human villages where people treated me like a bad omen because of my ears and my eyes. I walked with traders who thought I was useful, but never one of them. I sleep lighter than most. I see a bit farther in the dark. Herbs like me more than they like other people. But magic," she shrugged. "If I had any real power, I would have used it to get better boots years ago." He hadn't expected the answer to hurt, but it did. "So when the seer said you might be the last of your kind..." Aria's hand stilled on the window. "Last of what kind? The confusing kind, the unwanted kind. I already knew that." There was no self-pity in her tone, only a tired humor that made his chest ache. "You are not unwanted," he said quietly. "You rejected me," she reminded him. "I tried," he corrected. "The sky disagreed." She turned then, really looking at him. The room seemed smaller suddenly, the distance between them full of unsaid things. "Tell me one thing honestly," she said. "If you weren't king, if there were no council, no enemies, no throne, would you still want to reject me?" He opened his mouth, then closed it again. The truth formed like a weight behind his ribs, simple and sharp. "No," he said at last. "If I were only a man, I would not." For a moment, something quiet and bright passed between them, thin as glass, sharp as hope. Then Aria nodded slowly. "Then maybe," she said, "for 3 nights you can try to remember the man part, not just the king." He almost laughed, because no one had spoken to him like that in years. "You speak as if it is easy." "I didn't say easy," she answered, "just worth trying." He left before the bond could pull him any closer, before he could forget why he had wanted to protect her by letting her go. The door closed softly behind him. Aria waited until his footsteps faded down the stairs. Then she moved back to the window, pressing her ear against the cold wood. A faint sound drifted through, something between a howl and a whisper, coming from far beyond the walls. Her skin prickled. She unlatched the window just enough to peer out. The night lay over the mountains like a dark blanket, full of secrets. Below, the forest was a black sea. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw something move among the trees, shapes that weren't wolves, shadows that bent the wrong way. A cold voice, too soft to be real, brushed the edge of her mind. "Found you." Aria jerked back, slamming the window shut, heart pounding. She told herself it was just the wind, just fear, just imagination. But as she pulled the blanket around her shoulders, a faint silver pattern lit up at her throat, like symbols waking under her skin. She never saw it. Outside, far beyond the walls of Frostbane, something old and patient felt the spark of that light and turned its attention fully toward the Alpha King's keep. Lessons in the cold. People imagine that the days after a great prophecy feel special, like the air should hum and the sky should glow. In truth, the next morning at Frostbane Keep began the way most mornings in the north did, with cold fingers, stiff boots, and a great deal of muttering about both. Aria woke to a knock and a tray of breakfast that smelled like heaven and looked like it had been armored for battle. The bread was hard, the porridge thick enough to stop a sword, but the honey was rich and the tea hot. She ate every bite. A lifetime of wandering taught her never to waste a warm meal. Outside her door, voices argued. "She's a guest, not a prisoner, remember." That was Ryan. Our orders are to keep her safe, one guard replied. Safe means indoors. Safe also means not making the king's fated mate feel like she's in a cage, Ryan shot back. Relax. I'll take the blame if she escapes and conquers the world. A moment later, he pushed the door open with his shoulder, balancing a stack of furs. He grinned when he saw her awake. Morning, almost queen. She snorted. You can drop the queen part. Your king is very committed to not wanting one. Ryan said. Give it 3 days. People can change faster than weather when the right storm hits. He tossed her a fur-lined coat that looked like it could survive another ice age. Come on. If you're going to be glared at by the entire council, you might as well see the rest of the keep first. They walked the stone corridors together, Ryan pointing out things with easy humor. The crack in the ceiling where a drunk warrior had once thrown an axe and missed his target by 2 rooms. The training yard where Kael had broken his first sword in half at 15. The little courtyard where the kitchen staff smuggled out burnt bread for the stable kids. Aria listened, laughed, and tucked every detail away. Places were like people. If you paid attention to their scars and back doors, you learned what they were really like. Outside, the training grounds were full of clashing steel and barking orders. Snow crunched under boots as warriors ran drills, their breath steaming in the crisp air. At the far end, Kael moved through a series of strikes with a wooden practice sword, shirt sleeves rolled up, muscles coiled and precise. He was not like other kings Aria had glimpsed from a distance. He did not stand above his men and shout. He moved among them, training harder than any of them, taking hits and giving advice with the same steady voice. At one point, a young warrior slipped and fell hard onto the icy ground. Laughter rippled down the line. Kael's head snapped up. Enough. The laughter died at once. He walked over and held out a hand to the fallen boy. Again. The boy hesitated, ashamed. I'm not strong enough, my king. Kael shook his head. Strength is not what keeps you standing. Get up. When the boy obeyed, Kael adjusted his stance, quietly showing him how to plant his feet, how to breathe into his balance. Again and again, patiently, until at last the boy completed the sequence without falling. Good, Kael said. Now help the others who stumble. That is how a pack grows stronger. Aria watched, something warm stirring inside her. This was the man behind the legend, the one who knelt in the snow to teach instead of mocking, the one who could have ignored a stumbling soldier, but didn't. You see it now, Ryan murmured at her side. The part of him that everyone forgets when they tell stories about his scars. Yes, she whispered, I do. Kael saw them then. For a moment, his gaze hardened, as if remembering that Aria was a problem he had not yet solved. Then he sighed and walked over, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his wrist. You shouldn't be out in the open, he said. We don't know what's hunting you. We don't know if anything is hunting me, Aria replied. We only know that your roof leaks in 3 places and your guards walk too loud. Ryan choked on a laugh. Kael's mouth twitched before he reined it in. My guards walk loud on purpose, he said, so no one has a chance to be surprised. And your roof, she asked. Still working on that, he admitted. There are always more holes than hands to fix them. A small alarm bell rang from the inner courtyard then, sharp and fast. It wasn't the deep clang of a war warning, but something more urgent than routine. Kael turned at once. What is it? He called as a scout rushed in, coat flapping. A hunting party returned, my king, the scout panted. With injuries, nothing mortal, but something is wrong. They said the forest felt wrong. Kael's focus snapped into place. Bring them to the infirmary. Ryan with me. Aria stepped forward. I know herbs. I've treated worse than hunting cuts. Let me help. Kael hesitated. Every instinct screamed to keep her hidden. But the bond tugged, and another, quieter instinct answered. Leaders are not made by hiding the people who want to help. Stay close to Ryan, he said at last, and if I tell you to run, you run. They hurried to the infirmary, where the sharp scent of alcohol and crushed leaves hung heavy in the air. Several hunters lay on cots, pale but alive, with shallow cuts and bruises. Yet it wasn't the wounds that made Aria's skin prickle. It was their eyes. They were too wide, too shaken. What happened? Kael asked, his voice calm but unyielding. One of the hunters swallowed. The woods went quiet, my king. No bird song, no wind. And then shadows. They moved wrong against the light. We struck them, but our blades passed through like smoke. We only escaped because the horse bolted. Aria stepped closer to examine a man's arm, where the skin around a shallow cut was darkened, almost bruised with a strange gray tone. Did the shadows touch you? She asked. The man nodded weakly, cold as deep water. Aria touched the bruised skin gently. A sharp chill shot up her fingers, making her gasp. In that moment, she saw, just for an instant, a flash of black trees and a pair of pale, inhuman eyes far away, watching through the cut like a window. She yanked her hand back, heart pounding. Kael caught the movement. What did you see? Something is looking for us, she said slowly, and it doesn't like that these men came home. Without thinking, she set her palm lightly back over the wound, bracing herself. She closed her eyes, reaching not for power. She had never believed she had any, but for the same part of herself that had always known how to soothe fevered children and calm frightened animals. Be still, she thought fiercely. You are not welcome here. Warmth stirred in her chest, running down her arm like liquid sunrise. Her skin burned, then cooled. When she opened her eyes, the gray bruising was gone, the flesh above the cut clear and natural. The hunter sucked in a breath. The cold left. Ryan's mouth fell open. Well, that's new. Aria stared at her own hand as if it belonged to someone else. Faint silver lines had appeared along her fingers, like delicate roots or rivers of light, fading even as she watched. Kael's gaze was unreadable. You said you had no power. I said I didn't know I had any, she corrected, rattled. Apparently I was wrong. The room hummed with whispered awe. The high seer appeared in the doorway, drawn by the news like a moth to flame. Starmark, she breathed, seeing the fading light on Aria's skin. It is true, then. Starmark, Aria repeated. In the oldest stories, the seer said, there were those who could weave starlight into the world, heal what darkness had touched, hold back the void at the edges of all things. We called them Starborn. They vanished before even my grandmother's time. And now you think I'm one of them? Aria asked, stunned. The seer nodded. Or what remains of them? Kael's jaw clenched, which means every shadow in these mountains will be looking for her. The room felt smaller suddenly. That evening, the council gathered in the war room. Maps spread across the table, weighed down with carved stones. Aria stood near the wall, hands folded, trying not to fidget under so many eyes. An elder slammed his palm on the table. This is clear. She is tied to the shadows. They began to grow bolder when she arrived. We should send her away, far from our borders. And gift her to whatever is hunting her, Kael asked coldly. You would throw a single girl into the dark and call it strategy. We would protect our own, the elder shot back. She is my own, Kael said, the words escaping before he could stop them. The room went still. Aria's breath caught. He didn't look at her, but the echo of his words wrapped around her like a cloak and a chain at once. Not by my choice, he added stiffly, but by the moon S. That bond makes her part of my pack. I do not abandon my pack. Another counselor eyed him narrowly. Then reject her formally. Sever the bond. Let her go where she will. We keep our conscience and our safety. Kael's hands curled into fists. Aria watched him, her heart twisting. He truly believed that pushing her away would save her. He would sacrifice his own happiness before he let his people risk theirs. It was noble and infuriating and deeply lonely. That night, unable to sleep, she slipped back to the little courtyard Ryan had shown her. Snowflakes drifted lazily down, glowing in the torchlight. She tilted her head back, watching them melt on her face. "If I leave," she whispered to the empty air, "maybe they'll be safe." The bond inside her pulsed, disagreeing. It wasn't a voice, it was a feeling. A tug toward the keep, toward the man pacing the halls above her. She sighed. "You're very needy for a bond you don't want," she told it. Footsteps crunched in the snow. Kael stepped into the courtyard, fur cloak around his shoulders, frost in his hair. For a moment, they simply stood there, the quiet stretching between them. "I heard you healed the hunter," he said. "Thank you." "You should be thanking whatever star did it," she replied. "I just asked nicely." His lips twitched. "Most people don't think to be polite to magic." "Most people have never needed it to listen," she said. He studied her for a long moment, his gaze softer than before. "You intend to leave," he said finally. "I can feel it through the bond." She hesitated, then nodded. "If I walk far away from your borders, maybe the shadows will follow me instead." "They might," he said, "and you would be alone with them." "I've been alone before," she answered quietly. "I know," he said just as quietly. "That's what I can't bear." Their eyes met, full of things neither was ready to say. Above them, the moon peeked between clouds, listening. "3 nights," he said. "Stay, learn what you are, let us prepare. After that, we will decide together." "Together," she repeated, surprised that he offered the word at all. He nodded once, then turned to go. At the doorway, he paused. "Aria." "Yes." "If you ever feel the shadows calling again, do not answer. Nothing that whispers from the dark does so in friendship." She almost joked, then saw the memory in his eyes, the old battle he carried. She only nodded. Later, as she lay in the narrow tower bed, sleep finally claimed her. But her last waking thought was not of fear. It was of Kael in the snow, telling an awkward boy to get up, telling a stubborn girl that they would decide together. In the forest beyond the keep, frost gathered on twisted branches. The wind shifted, carrying with it a new sound. Not quite a howl, not quite a laugh, but something that promised change. Something was coming. And it was getting closer. The night the shadows tested them. People think great battles always start with trumpets and speeches. But the night the shadows came for Frostbane, it began with a joke in the stables and a single, simple choice. On the 3rd day, the sky lowered, heavy with snow. Kael's scouts brought back news of strange tracks near the outlying villages. The council argued again for sending Aria away. The High Seer argued for time. Tension lay over the keep like a second roof. Aria found herself in the stables with Ryan, helping brush down restless horses. The animals liked her. They leaned into her touch, snorting softly. "You know," Ryan said as a mare nudged Aria's shoulder, "if this queen business doesn't work out, you'd make an excellent stable master." "I prefer traveling almost queen and part-time horse therapist," Aria replied. Ryan laughed. "I can see why Kael doesn't know what to do with you." "You and me both," she said, though there was no bitterness in it now, only weary amusement. A boy of about 12 rushed in then, breath smoking in the cold air. "Captain Ryan, my lord, there's a messenger at the gate, says it's urgent, from the village of Black Hollow." Ryan's easy smile faded. "Black Hollow is close," he said, "too close for comfort." He glanced at Aria. "Stay here." "I can help," she protested. "I know," he said. "That's what I'm afraid of." Before she could argue, he was gone. Aria paced the length of the stable, the horses shifting restlessly with her mood. The bond tugged, uneasy, like a wire pulled too tight. She closed her eyes and felt it, Kael's focus sharpening, his worry darkening. The sense of distance between them shrinking as he moved toward danger. "No," she muttered. "Absolutely not. Do not be heroic without me, you overgrown wolf." She slipped out the side door, pulling up her hood, and made her way to the outer courtyard. By the time she arrived, Kael was already mounted, a dozen warriors at his back. The messenger, mud-splattered, eyes wild, stood nearby, wringing his cap. "Shadow things, my king," he was saying. "They came with the fog, cows frozen in the fields, the river running backward, children seeing things in the mirrors. We don't know what to fight." Kael's jaw was set. "You did well to come. We'll ride now. Ryan with me." Aria stepped forward. "So am I." Kael pulled his horse around to face her. "No." "You need a healer," she argued. "And if these shadows are tied to me, then maybe I can push them back. Or maybe they can finally grab what they want," he said. "I will not deliver you to them." She met his gaze, unflinching. "You told me last night we would decide together, so decide with me now. I don't want to stand behind walls while others risk their lives for a danger that might be following me." The wind tugged at his cloak. The warriors watched, pretending not to. He could order her to stay, have her locked in her room. But something in him knew that forcing her to hide would break more than her trust. It would break the courage that made her who she was. Ryan cleared his throat. "She's not wrong, Kael. If the shadows are coming anyway, better we have our best chance at fighting them." "She is not a weapon," Kael snapped. "No," Ryan agreed. "She's a person, and people have the right to choose how they stand in a fight." Kael closed his eyes for half a heartbeat, breathing through the war in his chest. When he opened them, his decision was carved into his face. "You ride at my side," he said to Aria. "You do not stray. If I say retreat, you retreat. Do we understand each other?" "Yes, your majesty," she said, trying not to look too triumphant. "And Aria," he added. "Yes. If you die, I will be very, very angry." Despite everything, despite the fear curling in her stomach, she smiled. "I'll do my best not to annoy you." They rode hard for Black Hollow, hooves pounding the frozen ground, breath pluming in sharp white bursts. The closer they came, the stranger the world felt. Sound seemed dampened, as if muffled by invisible hands. The wind dropped to a whisper. When they crested the last hill, Aria's breath caught. The village lay in a shallow valley, its thatched roofs dusted with snow. But the snow itself was wrong. It glistened with a faint, dark sheen, like ashes mixed with starlight. The air above the houses shimmered, as if heat rose from invisible fires. Fog pooled thick between the buildings, unnaturally still. In that fog, shapes moved, too tall, too thin, gliding rather than walking. Ryan swore under his breath. "Shades," he said. "I thought they were only stories." The creatures were not solid, not truly. They were stretches of deeper shadow against the gray, edges blurred, eyes like pale coins. Wherever they passed, frost spread in black veins over wood and stone. Children huddled in doorways. A few brave villagers waved torches, the flames dimmed by the unnatural cold. Kael drew his sword, the metal gleaming dully in the strange light. "Ryan, take half the men and get the villagers to the chapel. Solid walls, few windows. Keep them together. I'll hold the square." "And me?" Aria asked. "You stay where I can see you," Kael said. "I mean it." The shades turned as one, sensing them. The fog stirred, rolling forward like a living thing. A sound rose with it, not a howl, not a scream, but the scraping whisper of many voices, overlapping and hollow. Aria's blood went cold. The bond inside her flared, a tight, pulling ache. Kael stepped forward, planting himself between the creatures and the nearest house. "This is my land," he said, voice calm but ringing with power. You will not take my people." The shades paused, heads tilting as if listening. Then they came. They moved faster than mist should move, streaking across the snow. Kael met the first with a clean, powerful strike. His blade cut through it as though slicing smoke, but the shade recoiled, form ragged, letting out a thin, furious hiss. "Physical force hurts them," he called. "Aim for the center." Warriors surged forward, forming a loose wall around the square. Steel sliced, shadows twisted. Every time a sword connected, the shade shuddered, pieces of darkness scattering like burned paper, only to slither back together again. Aria pressed her back against the wall of a house, fingers digging into the rough wood. She could feel the pull of the shadows on her skin, like 1,000 cold fingers reaching. One of the creatures glided closer, ignoring the warriors. Its pale eyes fixed on her, its whisper curled inside her skull. "Starborn, there you are." Her heart hammered, she lifted her chin. "You have the wrong girl," she said, voice shaking but firm. "I'm just an unusually shaped herb seller." The shade laughed, a terrible dry sound. It reached toward her, its hand elongating, turning thin as smoke and sharp as glass. Before it could touch her, Kael slammed into it from the side, sword flashing. The shade burst apart with a screech. His wolf roared just beneath his skin, riding the edge of control. His eyes glowed a brighter gray, too bright, too wild. He turned, chest heaving, scanning for more threats. A second shade lunged at a small boy stumbling in the snow. Without thinking, Kael sprang toward it, his grip tightening. Aria saw it then, the dangerous shift. The way his shoulders hunched, teeth bared, breath ragged. He was slipping, the fine line between man and beast blurring. If he lost control here, in the middle of a terrified village, he could do as much harm as the shadows. She didn't think, she moved. Pushing off the wall, she sprinted past him, placing herself between the shade, the child, and the half-risen wolf in Kael's eyes. The creature's cold swept over her like an icy wave. The boy whimpered behind her. "Kael," she said, not shouting, just speaking his name with everything she had. Fear, trust, command, hope. His head jerked, his gaze locked on hers. For a moment, she saw the beast raging in him, wanting to tear, to protect, to destroy anything that threatened the bond. "I'm here," she said, reaching out a hand toward him. "With you, not afraid." The world narrowed to that line between them. Slowly, like a tide pulling back from a shore, the wild light faded from his eyes. His grip on the sword steadied. His breathing slowed. The wolf retreated, not beaten, but gently called back. "Behind you," he snapped, focus snapping past her. The shade lunged. Aria spun. She didn't raise her hands in defense. She raised them in refusal. "Enough," she said, voice low but full, like the sound of a river breaking ice. Heat surged through her, bright and fierce. Light burst from her fingers, not blazing, not harsh, but clear and steady, like starlight concentrated into a wave. It washed over the shade. The creature shrieked without sound, its form tearing apart, edges fraying into nothing. The wave kept going, rolling out across the square. Every shadow it touched recoiled, shriveling, pieces dissolving into harmless darkness that sank into the snow and vanished. The unnatural fog shredded, pulled apart by invisible hands. Cold cracked, like glass dropped from a height. For a heartbeat, the village lay in perfect, shimmering silence. Then sound returned. A baby cried in one of the houses, a warrior gasped, a horse stamped. Aria swayed, suddenly weary, light fading from her skin. The silver patterns along her arms glowed bright once, then dimmed. Kael caught her before she fell, arms solid and warm around her. "I told you not to die," he said, voice rough. She tried to smile. Not planning to, just need a very long nap. As he held her, a last tatter of shadow drifted near the edge of the square, too small to threaten, but strong enough to whisper as it faded. "Found you at last, little Starfear. We will come again." Only Aria heard it. Her fingers weakly gripped Kael's cloak. "They know me," she murmured. "They know what I am." "I know what you are too," he said fiercely. "You're mine to protect, and I will not reject you, not now, not ever." Her eyes fluttered, half-conscious. "You finally decided that, did you?" He huffed a soft, almost laugh. "Apparently I'm slow." She relaxed against him, slipping into darkness that felt, for once, like rest rather than fear. Around them, villagers peeked from doorways, eyes wide with awe and gratitude. Warriors glanced between their king and the unconscious girl in his arms, realization dawning. The High Seer arrived, breathing hard from the ride, her eyes shining with a strange mix of fear and hope as she took in the fading traces of light on the snow. "What have you done, Kael?" she whispered. He looked down at Aria, his expression set. "The only thing I could," he said. "I chose her." Far away, on a mountain peak where no human had walked in centuries, something vast stirred in the dark. It had felt the flare of star magic, the awakening of a power it thought it had extinguished long ago. It opened its many eyes and turned them toward Frostbane. The game, at last, had truly begun.